not like any other podcast, coming to you straight from the heartland where investing is told like it is. It's time for Darin Garman's Paranoid Banker Podcast. Hold on, because here comes the next episode of the Paranoid Banker Podcast.
Well, hey, fellow investors, Darin Garman here, and welcome to this week's podcast. Glad to have you with me. However, whenever, whatever you are using to stay in touch with this podcast, I am grateful for you being aboard and being with me today. And we're going to talk about a subject that you're going to start hearing a lot about. And many of you may have already started hearing about this. But as we get closer to 2020, you will hear more and more and more of it. And I'll tell you a few reasons why that is here in just a little bit. So what I'm talking about is, well, let's see, there's a whole bunch of words for it. Let me think. Recession. There's a word for it. Shit hits the fan. Well, that's more than one word, but meltdown, crash, you name it. So again, we got a lot of words for this, and as we get closer to 2020, you're going to be hearing more about it. So the question becomes one of this. The question becomes, what to make of this? Is this something that's really going to happen? Are there signs and indicators out there telling people that this is coming? Or is this simply guesswork? You know, because we've had it pretty good in general economically for, I want to say, maybe the last 8 to 9 years. So is this just, well, you know, it's about time for something like this to happen? So what do you make of this? And what should you as an investor do about it? I can tell you why 2020 is a significant number. Number one, it's a significant number, 2020. Okay, it's an even kind of number, closing out. Remember the year 2000 when everybody thought everything was going to go to hell and all the machines were going to rise and take over the world and things would crash down and planes would fall from the sky and all that. You guys remember that? Well, this is kind of like that. I mean, 2000 is a hell of a lot more significant than 2020, but 2020 has a lot of significance of it only because it's 2020. So people will get hooked up to, oh, it's 2020. Here's what's going to happen in 2020, not 2019, not 2023, but 2020. Here's what you're going to see happening. And so a lot of this significance is based on the number. So that's number one. But the real reason is because of what will happen in November in the year 2020. And what is that? Yes, we will have another presidential election. And just as like a sidebar to this, if you thought the campaigning and the mudslinging and the political agendas were strong 4 years ago or so, just wait for this one. This one is going to be a topper of all toppers. Hang on, buckle your seatbelts. It'll be interesting just watching this unfold, by the way. That's how bad it's going to be. And it will border on being ridiculous, is my opinion. But it will actually make, I think, good entertainment from time to time. So look, this is coming. And the main reason you're going to hear about this is the elections are coming up. Okay, that's going to be one of the big springboards that many people that predict this kind of stuff, whether there's some financial guru or just some guy on the street, they're going to use that. And it's going to be spun in many different ways, from a new orders taking over to old orders going to make things worse, to, we could have hundreds of conspiracy theories about all of this, but at the end of the day, this is the main reason why. So then the question is really this: is this for real? Is this something that's really going to happen? Is this something that you should take seriously? And more importantly, as an investor, what should you be doing? Should you be paying attention? Should you be taking notes? Should you be taking action on some things? Or is this just a whole bunch of BS and you should just bury your head in the sand and just kind of forget about it? It's just white noise. It's just noise in the background. What should you do? I'll tell you what you should do. Depending on where you go for information, who you ask, that answer can just vary. But the way I like to look at these things is basically like this. If it were to happen, market crash, shit hits the fan, whatever you want to use. Where do you want to be with your money and why? So really the question to ask is why. Why would I want to be there with my money? So let's just kind of throw some things out here, just thinking out loud. What market probably is the most volatile, or one of the most volatile markets if the shit hits the fan? What do you think? It's probably the stock market. And we could argue that maybe it's futures or commodities, and maybe it's things like gold or precious metal. We could do that, of course, sure. But let's kind of look more in a general sense and where most people are invested. And most people are invested in Wall Street. And most people are invested in the stock market, whether it's individual stocks or mutual funds, and whether it's regular money or maybe even IRA, 401k, or any kind of pension or retirement money. Okay. What markets are going to take a tumble if the shit hits the fan? Well, we already know what market that is, right? Because we've seen over the last 3, 6, 12 months how the market reacts to things. And as I've been saying for years, the market reacts now because of political, social events, and not so much economic events. Sure, it reacts to economic events, but now you've got the social, political, both global and national, I'm talking United States, things that happen and go on. And so when anything starts to happen in any of those three places, the place you're going to see problems is in the stock market, right? So then the question becomes, if you are like super heavily invested in the stock market, whether it's mutual funds or individual stocks, and the shit hits the fan, I think it's logical to think that you have a pretty high propensity of having a loss. And it could be a significant loss, actually, right? So knowing that, and knowing what we're going to be seeing over the next couple of years, is that really where you want your money to be? Or at least a lot of your money, a large percentage of it. So, that's like number one. So that's number one thing for you to think about and to chew on a little bit. So let's go to number two. Number two is my because. Okay, so the first question I had is why. Okay, why would you want to be in a volatile position when the chances are good over the next couple of years into 2020, and we're not even talking about a year or two afterwards, right? That's a whole different thing. Like 2021 or 22. So why would you want to be there? So that's number one. And then the other one is because. But my because is, if you're not going to be, if you're going to be in that market, it's because of what? Okay. If you're going to be in an investment over the next few years, it's because of why, of what? So, so let's look at multifamily property for just a second as an example. And let's just think about this logically. So if the market has a problem and things crash and we have some kind of a depression, we'll call it, that basically means people will be making less money and they'll have less money to spend and less money to live on, much less in some cases. So what's usually the first thing that goes if something has to go? Okay, well, it's kind of your everyday things that you don't really need, but you spend money on anyway. So those are things like streaming TV, big cell phone plans, maybe having your lawn mowed or your snow removed. So it's paying for those things that you can pretty much do yourself or you don't have to do without. And then deciding I'm going to do without. So that's the first thing that goes, right? Second thing that then goes is what? So you've eliminated all of the things that are more elective versus mandatory. Okay, you've eliminated those. What's next? Well, what's next is where else can we start cutting costs? So when we go to the grocery store, do we buy 5 pounds of hamburger or now do we buy 2 pounds of hamburger? Okay. When we go to the store, do we buy 1 head of lettuce now versus 3 we used to buy? When I get gas, now am I carpooling more? Am I riding my bike more? Am I riding the bus more and filling my car up with, once a week versus twice a week? Okay, so then you got those things. And usually those things the cycle there takes about 2 months, 2 to 3 months until you pretty much have squeezed as much out of every expense that you can without having some kind of a dramatic effect on your life, okay, or on your day-to-day living. So look, most of us can go without a bunch of elective things we're doing now. I mean, I can go without TV. I can go without whatever subscription service I've got. I can go without Amazon Prime. I can go without heading to the store twice a week and buying this and maybe buying my favorite beer or my favorite drinks or, so we can do that. But then when it gets to bare minimum, okay, the next thing that goes and has to go is the biggest expense most people have. So think about this. You've gone ahead and you've eliminated a lot of those smaller expenses, some of those elective expenses, not mandatory. You've eliminated as much of those as you can. And you have now changed your lifestyle as much as you can so you're spending as little money as possible. The stage is set for the next thing, and that's housing, right? That's people's biggest expense. And so what that means is that for those people that are that have the big mortgage payments coming in, the big property tax payments, that's the next thing that's going to go. Okay. Now people are into foreclosure. Now people are looking for an alternative place to live. Follow me on this? Okay. This will take roughly, the foreclosure process will take roughly 3 to 6 months depending on which state, you're in and how you go through the process. And, so just, there's a bunch of, I've gone through the foreclosure process in terms of properties that, years ago we used to buy a bunch of them and we still buy bank repossessions. And, we bought, repos from banks and credit unions. And so, for years I had a lot of experience with that. So the deal is, it's 3 to 6 months. So then you've got, between getting rid of, let's just say elective stuff, then you start cutting down on your mandatory stuff as much as you can. Then you need to make changes because you can't maintain a mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, as well as repair and maintenance for the home. So let's say furnace goes out, air conditioning goes out, needs to be painted. I mean, all sorts of repair and maintenance items come up. And so you run behind there too. All of a sudden, you're pretty much making the decision that you're going to bail. So what's your next move? Where are you going after that? You're going one of two places. You're either going to go live with somebody, okay? Let's just say grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, relative, friend, okay? Or you're going to have to rent an apartment. And most people, rather than living with someone and burdening them with their issues and problems that they're having, are going to choose to rent an apartment. So the question then is, remember I said because. So if you really want to think about it logically, you want to be in apartments because that's pretty much the last place people are going to go. Right? So if the shit does hit the fan like some gurus or, whomever financial experts out there are saying it will here soon. And again, there's a lot of them, more than I would have thought by now. But again, it's going to hit fever pitch here in the next 2 years, year and a half, really. Where do you want to be? You want to be in multifamily because it's really kind of the last place people are going to be able to go. Because after that, then it's living on the streets pretty much. And yeah, we can come up with, well, maybe they can, once again, find a relative or a friend, or maybe they can live in a tent somewhere. I mean, there's all that. But for the most part, for most people, it's going to be apartment living. And so you combine that with our nation being a renter nation now, and will continue to be a renter nation. So think about this. Let's say that there is no shit that hits the fan. Let's say there is no crash. There is no depression. There is no market swing. There's nothing like that. Even if so let's say that's the case. Our country is becoming and will become more and more a renter nation. More and more people will want to rent, choose to rent, will rent. The American dream is gone. I guess, wait a minute, I shouldn't say that. It's not gone, but it sure as hell isn't even close to what it used to be. And that was sold to, Americans in the, post-World War II era and continued through today, but much less today than it used to be. So again, why and because? So why do you want to be in one of the most volatile places you could be in the event there is a downturn? Why? Why would you want to be there, especially if you have a large percentage of your wealth there? And where is the most logical place to not only look at what I would call a safer haven, a safer place to park your money versus, let's say, the conventional markets, but also a place that is trending upward now anyway from an occupancy, people wanting to rent versus wanting to own standpoint, because it's where people live, right? And so let's kind of come full circle here. I've talked to quite a few investors, and I'm talking with another investor here, in a day or two, having a conference call with them. And it's about this. Okay, it's about, here's what I see coming. Here's what could happen. What kind of things should I be thinking of doing in terms of parking my money, not only to make the most money I can in terms of return, income, wealth building, but also in terms of protection. And look, we all know there's no guarantees or warranties with any investment. And that includes banks and credit unions. There's none. But thinking logically about at least picturing things ahead a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, especially with the coming presidential election and the circus that will bring and the effect that will have on the markets. You want to be thinking about this. You want to be planning this. So early in the podcast, I said, should you be actively pulling money out and just putting it in places that you think you need to be like right now, right away? Or is all this just talk, just bullshit, and you can kind of put your head in the sand and ignore it and just keep your investments rolling? I can tell you this. You don't want to be putting your head in the sand and ignoring this. I'm not so much a guy that jumps on the bandwagon of, oh my God, in the next few years it's going to get bad. But what I will say, the longer time goes by, the more of a chance there is of some huge, volatile, financially damaging swings that could have a huge effect on your net worth, your income, especially now if you're my age. If you're in your 50s, mid 40s, 50s, or older, this is a big, big deal. Huge. Because we just don't have the time anymore. So, is there a big crash coming? Is there a big correction? Is the shit going to hit the fan? I don't know. But I'm sure going to be making some plans and some decisions and strategizing on this and taking the time to do it just in case it does. And I highly suggest you do the same. All right? Well, look, have a great day. Have a great rest of your week or weekend. Thanks for listening to me on today's podcast. We'll talk to you soon. See ya. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Hey, Darin Garman here. If you have not registered for our apartment property discovery day, you're going to want to do that. Discovery Day is on March 29th, where we will spend a day looking at touring and understanding apartments, apartment investing, apartment community ownership. If you've been with me for a long period of time and have been considering getting involved in some of our apartment community opportunities, this is a great way to not only get to know me a little bit better, but we pull the curtain back on the properties we own, we run, we manage, and also any opportunities we're looking at purchasing in the future. So don't miss Discovery Day. It is March 29th, Friday, March 29th. If you've not registered for it yet, just simply send me an email at Darin@heartlandinvestmentpartners.com, Darin@heartlandinvestmentpartners.com to take part in our spring property Heartland of America Apartment Community Discovery Day. Look forward to having you and spending time with you on that day. Darin@heartlandinvestmentpartners.com. Don't miss it.
Thanks for joining Darin Garman's Paranoid Banker Podcast. For investment questions, comments, or to get in touch with Darin, go to www.garmanblog.com. Thanks for joining Darin Garman's Paranoid Banker Podcast. For investment questions, comments, or to get in touch with Darin, go to www.garmanblog.com.